welcome back to Portrait of an Editor. I am Francis Lombard. Here is my final New York Comic Con 2022 interview. Sorry it's taken a while, plate's been a little bit loaded, so thank you for your patience. I first talked with Scott Dunbier years ago on the eve of another New York Comic Con. You can find that talk on Portrait of an Editor's Patreon page. In our new conversation, we discuss his process of producing IDW's Artist Editions line. We also discuss the making of Scott's tribute to his friend Darwin Cook, the gorgeous Parker the Martini edition Last Call. We also talk about Scott's first project, editing Darwin on DC Comics' Run of the Spirit. Enjoy! So Scott, thank you for coming on Portrait of an Editor during busy New York Comic Con. Were you here in 2019? Okay, so did it miss a beat? In your eyes?
It really feels like, the next year. A lot of people, a lot of booths, some notable absences, different companies that aren't here, but overall it feels like Comic-Con.
Yeah, that is one thing, like walking around. Marvel's here, DC's not, Dark Horse isn't. And I was talking to somebody else about San Diego, and that was sort of a similar situation where some bigger companies that usually are there weren't, but it seemed like it made room for other companies to flourish a bit. I mean, what do you think? Do you think you need to have the old standbys here, or is things change and that's a good thing?
I don't know. These shows are incredibly expensive to do. If you're a company like DC, I don't remember how many booths they used to have here, but they used to have like 40 booths in San Diego, and that's a very expensive proposition. I think that the fans miss a company like DC Comics, but it does open the way for, as you said, smaller, newer companies to step up and sort of fill that gap.
Yeah. So you're here for IDW, and what is your, Keith was telling me before the interview exactly what your primary agenda is here. I don't want to talk about it, but is that getting artwork and prepping for the artist editions? Is that you're here working at the con? Is that your major thing of prepping the next artist editions, getting stuff together because you are in New York City and it's a location that people travel to?
I'm prepping for the next 10 artist editions.
Okay.
Since yesterday I've scanned, a lot of art by a lot of really great artists, people that I want to work with and do books in the future. My schedule is filled up. I have in a half an hour another gentleman, a collector from France that I know, I was kind enough to bring a bunch of good classic art that I'll be scanning. So that's my primary job here at the show. I've got a couple of panels. We have enough space, luckily, that the people who run the booth for us from IDW were able to accommodate my scanner and room for me to sit and work during the show. So it's been a very convenient and happy solution.
Now, what is the process of having this traveling show? You bring your own scanner with you, and I know the first time we ever talked, you didn't want to really talk about your secrets, which is fine, but this is different than most of the other editors I ever talked to, is that you're this traveling show of bringing a scanner to a location, having people come into the show. Are you reaching out months ahead of to people in New York? Because I think you originally were from this area, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm originally from New York City.
So what is the organization like to make something successful, a visit to New York successful for this?
I'm in a sort of unique position because before I was an editor, before I went to work at Wildstorm for Jim Lee, I was an art dealer, and I dealt art, for more than 15 years, and I know a lot of collectors. I know the person who was just here
because you know the art, do you keep files on where the art is, if it's being, who you originally sold it for, or they're selling it to? How do the winds take you on finding it?
I am not nearly that organized. It's in my head.
It's all in your head.
Yeah.
And then you get updated if somebody sells a bunch of art to somebody else, or?
No, I just ask. I know a lot of dealers that are friends of mine. Albert Roy is a friend of mine. Mike Berkey is a friend of mine. And like I said, if I don't know where something is, I can find out probably. And there are other resources. There are auction houses like Heritage. Things pop up there that are incredibly rare, and I have a great relationship with the people at Heritage. Jim Halpern and Todd Midnight, especially. They're both great people. They're fans. They're collectors, and they're very helpful. I've occasionally made trips to Texas to scan art that were set for auctions. It's just a matter of figuring out what books I'm going to do, finding out where things are if I don't know, and then just moving forward from there.
Now, before we started recording, you mentioned some of the books, the plans you have for the artist editions. Is that something you sat down to say, I want to create these and make these happen?
Oh, yeah.
Or is it something that you just found out about? I know where I can get this art. Which is it?
It's a combination. If let's see, there are some things where I just, I know where things are. I know people who have a lot of art, and that makes it easier for me to put a book together. And when I decide which books I want to do, first it's generally if it's an artist whose work I really like.
Okay.
I don't really enjoy doing books, artists that I'm not a fan of. So I'll figure out what books I want to do, and then I'll see what's available. There are some books I've been working on for literally the last 10 years. I haven't ramped up on them. There are a couple of artists whose work I have scans of, and when I go to a show or when I go to see someone's collection, if they have a particular artist who I'm not necessarily working on at that point, I can still sort of archive it. I can get 5 pages by artist X, even if I'm not working on the book, if it's something that I'm thinking maybe someday. So I do that a lot.
Yeah, and you've been doing this for, over 10 years, since you basically convinced, when you joined IDW, I think you started this up pretty quickly after joining them.
Well, what happened was, Ted Adams was really a great publisher. He had vision, and, he hired me after I left DC, and we talked at length about different kinds of things I wanted to do, and one of them was artist editions, and I told him that I completely understand if he doesn't want to do it, if he thinks it's not going to make money, I told him that, one way or another I wanted to do this, whether it was for IDW or just self-publishing, and honestly I didn't expect him to do it because they are expensive books.
Yeah.
And he said, let's give it a shot. And the first book was the Dave Stevens Rocketeer, which we just reprinted an updated version of. And that was very successful. It went into a couple of printings immediately. It was well received by fans, well received by retailers. I'm not sure if I answered your question or not.
Yeah, well, I guess another lead into it is what's the biggest surprise? Is the reception of this? Because you were hesitant to go to TED. Now you have 10 years or more to look back, and what is the thing that's surprised you the most about this journey?
I guess the longevity. I mean, do you have any idea how many artist editions I've done?
To be honest, not really. A lot.
Try to guess.
I'm saying 35?
80.
80. I've been missing a lot then. And I know you have like 3 different versions too, right?
Well, I'm not counting artists and editions because that's a completely different thing.
Okay.
And artifact editions are included in that. Although we've ended artifact editions, we're just going to call them all artist editions from now on because honestly it was kind of confusing to people, which is my fault because I tend to overthink things.
So that's 8 a year, pretty much, and on average.
I did 13 one year.
That's amazing.
I was gonna die.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Yeah.
that's a lot just for a regular comic.
I didn't want to do that many, but Ted really wanted me to do that many. And so, it averages out. I mean, there have been years where I've done 3. The first couple of years, I did 1 a year. The first one was Rocketeer, second one was Walt Simonson. Third one was Hollywood EC. And then it just sort of grew from there.
Yeah. So, I mean, the biggest surprise is this for you, looking back, on top of the sort of the longevity of it. Was there anything else for you personally about where this has gone, this journey has taken you?
One thing about me as an editor is I trust my taste. If I like something and if I want something, I generally feel other people will as well. And that's sort of been the case with artist editions.
Was in trusting your taste, was there ever one that you made happen that you were surprised of the success, or just surprised at how it was received by the public?
Not really. I mean, there have been some that I've been surprised haven't sold as well as I thought they should.
Yeah.
The Michael Golden Micronauts book.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
But but that's also because that was before we started selling books through PRH, Penguin Random House. And Penguin Random House, we're going to sound like a shill, but Penguin Random House really enabled us to reach a much greater market. The last book that we did before them was the Micronauts book. And I think if that book would have gone through Penguin Random House, I think it would have sold more than twice the copies.
Yeah.
Because that's what we've sort of been experiencing. I mean, our numbers are doubling on artist editions. We found a market, people who never knew these books existed and are now honestly rabid followers of them.
Now, where is it going? What is the big difference? What are they doing? Getting in? What market are they getting it into? That
they have a lot of experience. That's not my job. I don't know. I can't tell you, but to me, it's like magic. It's like when I use Photoshop to merge pages. That's not real. That's magic. Same thing.
So one other thing that I really enjoy that I bought that you have your hands in was the last. I'm not saying absolute. Just the martini shot.
The martini edition last call
with about Darwin Cook's the last 2 books that he did, adaptations he did for of Parker's. That took a long time to get here. Was that? I mean, to get in my hands. I think I've talked to you once about it and just watching it on the news. How did you handle COVID and the delays, and what was it that took forever? It seemed to take forever. It's great. It's great looking. It was worth the wait.
It did take forever, and as much as I'd like to blame COVID for it, and COVID had a little bit to do with it, but honestly, I'm squarely to blame for it being so long, and that's because Darwin Cook was a very close friend of mine. I was best man at his wedding, and it was a very difficult book to work on. It was probably the most difficult book on a personal level that I've ever worked on, and that's because the first book is so great. I mean, Darwin Cook was not only a tremendous writer and artist, but he was a tremendous designer. Can I curse?
I'm sorry?
Can I curse?
Yes.
He was a motherfucker of a designer.
Yes.
He was amazing. And did a roundtable interview with Bruce Timm and Ed Brubaker, and it was I don't know, like 40 pages, and we were as honest as we could be about Darwin, both the good and the bad, and it was a very tough thing to do and to transcribe and edit it and go through all that, but then also all the back matter in the book. 100 pages. It was really tough because people tell me how great it is. I'm sorry, it's not nearly as great as it would have been if Darwin had been there to do it. So I told Marcia, Darwin's wife, that because she was mad at me, and rightfully so, that the book took so long.
Oh.
But I told her it was because I had a ghost standing over my shoulder. Darwin was the ghost in the room, and I kept on second guessing myself, and then finally I just had to get it done, and luckily people seem to like it, and I have to talk about the design on the book. Sean Phillips designed it, did a phenomenal job, just a great job, and Sean drew a new story for the book that Ed Brubaker wrote that was a fantastic story. When I approached Abby Westlake, Donald Westlake's widow, she was not on board to do a new story, a brand new story, something that wasn't an adaptation, until she read the story. And then she read the story and she loved it. And so, she gave her approval, and then we went ahead with that. It was probably the longest book I've ever worked on, and it certainly was the most difficult.
There's a lot of things when I talk to editors over the years about being a first reader, but also being a professional and making that train just keep going. And I think maybe there's a lot of times the editor has to be, I guess, distanced emotionally, and this was something
that's not me.
You even when you on any books, and then so
okay. Do you know how I got the gig working with Darwin at DC?
No, I don't.
Okay. Darwin and his previous editor had a falling out. They had some issues. And I have a reputation for working well with difficult people.
Alan Moore?
And so Dan DiDio called me up and he asked me if I wanted to work on The Spirit with Darwin. And, my reaction was, of course.
Yeah.
And we knew each other, but not really well, but we became very good friends. And, it's hard for me to work with people without being friends with them in a lot of cases. Sometimes you just hire people, but with somebody like Darwin or somebody like Sam Keith or somebody like Jeff Campbell, I talk to them. I email, of course, but as you said, I don't know if it was part of this podcast, but I once told you that I was a phone guy, and that's true. I'm a phone guy. I like having relationships with people that I'm working with. I think that's important. I think just having a distant relationship is counterproductive.
So that basically is that you can't help but sort of establish something beyond just professionalism.
There has to be a connection there,
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'm just making, widgets or whatever they call it.
So it was just putting this book together. Everything came out. You're just a raw nerve. It sounds like it at times. But
Last Call?
Yeah, Last Call.
Yeah, I'm happy with the way it came out. I wish it would be better because I'll always think about what it could have been. And the same thing, I always think about the 3 or 4 books that we were planning on doing. We were planning on doing Butcher's Moon, another Parker book. We were planning on doing this crazy book about great idea. It's so cool, but it's so. I'm sorry for all the things that we aren't working on.
Yeah. I'm really happy what you were able to include in that edition was those painted pieces that were part of the line of the reprint of the novels, and just all those. I was just happy to see what was there, because I have that first book that you guys released, but I was like, there's got to be more out there, and it was so nice to see them and have them on that huge format, and they're gorgeous. I mean, and it's seeing his artwork in a different way, in a different approach that you just never saw. So I no matter what, I'm damn impressed by what it was as a release. So.
Thank you. I really do appreciate that, and I'm glad people like it.
So what else are you working on now? You have how is IDW keeping you even busy with everything else? Is there anything else you're working on that we should be looking forward to?
Besides artist editions, I work on a few creator-owned books. One of them is Ragnarok with Walter Simonson.
Yep, gorgeous.
It's going to be returning sometime. I wouldn't say soon, because Walter's not the fastest guy in the world, but he's one of the best.
Yeah.
And then John Layman and Nick Bradshaw are following up the first volume of Bermuda, which was a book that I really enjoyed. Next year, and then there'll be more Rocketeer stuff coming out.
Oh, great! Great.
I'm trying to talk Stephen Rooney into doing a second series, which he may or may not do, depending on his schedule. But that was a really touching story, and the Rocketeer estate, Jennifer Baco, Dave's sister, was very pleased with that. So and other things. I'm forgetful, so I know there are other things.
Well, Scott, I'll let you get back to scanning. I really appreciate you taking the time, and have a great, New York Comic Con 2022. It looks like, I think comics are back.
Yeah.
So
thank you very much for taking the time to interview me. I appreciate it. Actually, can I plug one thing?
Sure.
I am going to be at Baltimore Comic Con at the end of this month, and I'm running a charity art auction for Hero Initiative. So anybody who is inclined, check out their website. The art's up online right now, but more is coming. We'll have dozens of pieces done especially for this auction. Guys like Mike Mignola, Walter Simonson, Kelly Jones, a whole bunch of different people.
Oh, okay. I'll reach out to you and make sure I get links and do everything. Yeah, great. Sounds like a great thing. Yeah, Hero Initiative, I contribute to that. It's a great thing, great service. Yeah. So, well, have a great con, and I'll see you around.
All right, man. Thank you very much.